Have you ever left a doctor's appointment feeling like something was missing? Like you didn't quite say everything you wanted to say? Or maybe you walked out with more questions than answers? You're not alone. A lot of people, especially those of us over 60, walk into those exam rooms with the best intentions, polite, respectful, grateful, but end up feeling a little brushed aside or confused. And the funny thing is, it's often not the doctor's fault. Sometimes it's not even ours. It's the way we've been taught to speak, to act, to not make a fuss. But here's the thing. When it comes to your health, being too polite or too vague could actually get in the way of the care you deserve. That's why this conversation matters. In today's video, we're going to talk about something that can quietly but powerfully shape your entire healthcare experience: how you talk to your doctor. More specifically, 5 common communication habits that can unintentionally lead to missed diagnoses, delayed treatments, or just plain frustration. And the best part? These are things you can change, starting today, without needing any fancy medical knowledge, just a little awareness and a willingness to speak up for yourself. Now I want you to picture this. You're sitting in the waiting room, maybe flipping through an old magazine, maybe scrolling your phone, maybe just going over in your head what you want to tell the doctor. But when your name is called and you finally sit down across from them, everything feels a little rushed. The doctor's typing on the computer, asking questions quickly, and you're trying to keep up. Before you know it, the appointment is over and you didn't quite get to that one issue that's been bugging you for weeks. Sound familiar? Let's take a step back and start from the beginning, because the first mistake happens before the doctor even walks into the room. One of the most common habits I've seen among older adults, including close friends and family, is speaking in vague or unclear terms. Now, I get it. We don't always have the exact words for what we're feeling. It's not like you walk around with a medical dictionary in your pocket. But the truth is, when we say things like, "I just feel off," or "I don't know, something's not right," we leave the doctor guessing. And guessing in medicine can be dangerous. I remember my friend James, 81 years old, who told his doctor, "I've been feeling kind of weak lately." That's all he said. No mention of when it started, whether it was worse in the mornings, whether it came on suddenly or gradually. The doctor asked a few follow-up questions, but James just couldn't recall the details. Weeks later, when the weakness got worse and tests were finally run, it turned out he had anemia, a condition that could have been treated much sooner if only the conversation had been clearer from the start. Now, I'm not blaming James. Most of us aren't used to describing our symptoms like detectives. But this is where a simple habit can change everything. Before your appointment, take a few minutes to jot things down. When did the symptoms start? How often does it happen? What makes it better? What makes it worse? Is it sharp or dull? Does it come and go, or is it constant? You don't need to write a novel. Just a few bullet points in plain English. You're not being difficult. You're giving your doctor the map they need to help you. And that leads perfectly into the next mistake I see far too often: showing up without a written list of concerns. Now you might be thinking, "Oh, I'll remember everything once I'm there." But let me ask you this: how many times have you walked out of a grocery store and realized you forgot the milk? Our brains aren't built to hold everything at once, especially when we're in a high-pressure situation like a medical visit. My friend Linda is the perfect example. She went in to talk about her blood pressure medication, but she had also been having trouble sleeping and occasional dizzy spells. By the time the appointment was over, the only thing they'd covered was the prescription. She remembered the rest halfway home. A few weeks later, the dizziness got worse, and wouldn't you know, it was connected to the same medication. If she'd mentioned everything at once, the doctor might have made the connection right there and then. That's why I always recommend writing things down ahead of time. Not on a napkin, not in your head, but on paper or in your phone. List out your questions and concerns and prioritize the ones that matter most to you. When you're in the room, hand it to the doctor or keep it in front of you. That list is your power tool. Yep. It keeps the appointment on track, it helps your doctor see the full picture, and it gives you peace of mind knowing you didn't leave anything out. Now, I know some people worry about being a burden or taking up too much of the doctor's time. Let me tell you something. That's exactly what the appointment is for. You've earned the right to be heard. You've lived a full life, you've worked hard, raised families, overcome challenges, and you deserve to be taken seriously. Your doctor can't fix what they don't know about, and they can't read your mind. But when you come prepared with clear details and a list of what matters to you, you're not just helping yourself, you're helping them do their job better. You might be surprised how many doctors actually appreciate when a patient walks in, organized and ready. It's like sitting down at the dinner table with all the ingredients prepped. Everything runs smoother, there's less guesswork, and everyone leaves satisfied. And here's something I want you to remember. It's not just about getting a diagnosis. It's about building a relationship. Every appointment is a chance to strengthen that connection with your doctor, to become a true partner in your care. That means showing up with clarity, with confidence, and yes, with that little piece of paper that reminds you what you came for. So let's take a breath here. We've talked about speaking clearly and preparing ahead. Those two simple shifts, using specific language and making a list, can make all the difference in how you're treated, how you're heard, and how quickly you get the help you need. Now let's keep going. There's another subtle habit that can creep in without us realizing, and it has to do with what we assume the doctor already knows. Think about it for a moment. How many times have you gone into a follow-up appointment and skipped over things because, well, you figured the doctor already knew? After all, you've seen them before, maybe even for years. They have your file, right? They probably remember what medications you're on, what procedures you've had, and what you talked about last time. But here's the truth most people don't realize. Doctors see dozens of patients every week. Some see that many in a single day. And while they care deeply and work hard, they don't have photographic memories. They rely on charts, notes, and whatever updates you bring to the table. So when you assume they remember everything about your history, you may unintentionally leave out something critical. Let me tell you about Charles. He's been seeing the same primary care physician for over 10 years. A kind man in his mid-70s, sharp as a tack, and always kept himself in good shape. But at his last appointment, he came in complaining of joint pain. The doctor asked a few questions, looked at his notes, and started thinking along the lines of arthritis. But what Charles didn't mention, and didn't think he needed to, was that he'd started a new blood pressure medication about a month earlier. That small detail made all the difference. As it turned out, the medication was causing inflammation in his joints. But because Charles assumed his doctor remembered all his prescriptions and had already made the connection, it took several appointments and extra tests before they figured it out. All of it could have been avoided if he'd simply mentioned the change up front. Now, this isn't about blaming Charles. We've all been there. But it's a reminder that even if your doctor knows you well, it's still up to you to bring them into the loop every time. A good way to do that? Start each visit with a quick summary. Since my last visit, I've started taking this new pill. I've been feeling more tired in the evenings, and my appetite has dropped a little. That's it. Just a few short sentences. It gives your doctor a fresh window into your world and helps them focus on what's changed, not just what's stayed the same. And remember, those changes might not seem like a big deal to you. You might chalk them up to aging or just part of life. But to a trained professional, even a small update could be a clue that leads to the right diagnosis faster. Don't leave those clues out. Think of it like catching up with an old friend. You wouldn't expect them to know what's been happening in your life if you never told them. The same goes for your doctor. Letting go of that assumption opens the door to better care. It also reminds us that, as patients, we have power. We're not just there to be poked, prodded, and prescribed to. We're there to engage, to inform, to collaborate. And that brings us to another habit that often gets in the way, even with the best of intentions: talking too much without letting the doctor guide the conversation. Now, I say this with love because I know how it feels. You've been waiting weeks for this appointment. Maybe you've been dealing with a nagging issue that hasn't gone away. Maybe there are multiple things going on, aches and pains and side effects and questions. And the minute the doctor walks in, it can feel like the floodgates open. You start from the beginning, tell the whole story, and suddenly you're halfway through the visit and still on the first topic. Let me share a story. Susan, a lovely woman I've known for years, went to her doctor because of a sharp pain in her knee that had been bothering her when she stood up from her chair. Important stuff, right? But when she sat down in that exam room, she began telling the story from months ago. About gardening, about her cousin's recent surgery, about the cold weather she thought might have played a role. All of it was real. All of it mattered to her. But it also used up a lot of the appointment time. By the time they got around to looking at her knee, they had barely 10 minutes left. The doctor had to rush through the exam, and Susan walked out still unclear about what exactly was going on. Not because she talked too much, but because there wasn't enough space for the doctor to ask the right questions and steer things in the right direction. This is such a common and completely understandable habit. We want to feel heard. We want to tell our story. But there's a better way to do that, one that still lets you share everything important without overwhelming the conversation. Start by giving your main concern right away. I've been having sharp pain in my right knee when I get up from sitting. Boom. That's the headline. After that, pause and let the doctor ask follow-up questions. They might want to know when it started, what makes it worse, whether the pain travels elsewhere. Once that line of questioning is complete, then you can move on to the next thing on your list, if time allows. It's kind of like a good dance. You lead a little, then they lead. You share what matters, then you let them take it from there and ask the next step. That back and forth not only keeps the appointment focused, but it also shows your doctor that you respect their process, and they, in turn, will likely respect your time and concerns even more. And if you have several things to discuss, that's okay. Just be upfront. I have a few concerns today, but the most important one is this pain in my knee. That simple sentence helps your doctor prioritize and ensures you get to the heart of the issue before the clock runs out. Now, none of this means you should rush through the appointment or stay silent. Quite the opposite. You have every right to speak up, to ask questions, and to share your experience. This is your body, your life, and your health. But the way we structure that conversation, the way we hand over the information bit by bit, instead of all at once, makes it easier for the doctor to truly understand you and offer the best help they can. So just take a breath. You don't have to squeeze everything into one long story. You don't have to go back 15 years unless it's relevant. Focus on what's happening now and let your doctor do what they're trained to do. Guide the way forward. And that brings us to the last mistake we need to talk about, one that might be the most important of all. It's something many thoughtful, considerate, well-meaning patients do without realizing it. It comes from a good place, but it can quietly lead to real harm if left unchecked. It's the habit of minimizing your symptoms, downplaying what you're going through because you don't want to complain, don't want to seem dramatic, or maybe you just assume it's all a normal part of getting older. And let me tell you, I understand this one deeply. Many of us were raised to tough it out, to grin and bear it, to not make a fuss unless we were really in trouble. That kind of resilience is admirable. But in the doctor's office, it can backfire. When you say things like, "Oh, it's probably nothing," or "It's just a little ache, I'm fine," You might think you're being modest or even helpful, but what you're really doing is giving your doctor less to work with. You're unintentionally shrinking the urgency of something that could be important. And remember, your doctor can't treat what they don't know. They can't look inside you like an X-ray. They can only respond to what you tell them. I'll never forget what happened to Dorothy, a neighbor and dear friend of mine. She was 78 at the time and had been feeling a tightness in her chest for a couple of weeks. But she brushed it off. She figured, it's just aging, nothing serious. She went in for a routine checkup and happened to mention it, almost casually, right at the end of the appointment. Just a throwaway line. By the way, I've been feeling a little tightness here and there. Probably nothing. Well, that nothing turned out to be something. A heart condition that needed immediate treatment. Luckily, the doctor caught it just in time. But afterward, Dorothy told me, I almost didn't mention it. I didn't want to sound like I was complaining. That sentence still gives me chills. She almost didn't say a word, and it could have cost her life. So please, if there's anything I hope you take away from this video, it's this. Your voice matters. Your symptoms matter. If something is hurting or changing or worrying you, talk about it. Be specific. Be honest. You're not being dramatic. You're being responsible. And if you're worried about overreacting, that's what your doctor is there for. Their job is to listen, evaluate, and decide what needs attention. Your job is to show up and speak the truth of what you're experiencing. No sugarcoating, no minimizing, just facts from your perspective. And don't think for 1 second that speaking up is selfish or annoying. On the contrary, it shows that you care about your health and that you're serious about living well. Now, let's pause and take a breath together. We've covered a lot. 5 simple habits that, when adjusted, can totally transform the way your doctor sees you, hears you, and helps you. These aren't complicated medical tricks or miracle cures. They're about owning your voice, taking up space, and becoming an active partner in your care. So let's take a moment to reflect. When you walk into your next appointment, are you going to let those old habits creep in? Are you going to downplay your pain, speak in general terms, assume your doctor knows everything, or try to squeeze 10 stories into one visit? Or are you going to do something different? Are you going to take a few minutes the night before to jot down your main concerns? Will you speak clearly, using simple words but specific ones? Will you say, I've had this dull ache in my back for 4 weeks, especially after I wake up, instead of just, my back's been bothering me? Will you remember that it's not your job to make the doctor's life easier by staying quiet, but to give them what they need to take care of you? Because here's the truth. These small changes can create a ripple effect. They can mean catching a problem early instead of late. They can mean getting the right medication instead of the wrong one. They can mean walking out of that office feeling respected, understood, and hopeful instead of confused, brushed aside, or worried. You have every right to be an informed, engaged patient. You've earned it. You've been through life's ups and downs. You've shown up for others more times than you can count. Now it's time to show up for yourself. And here's the best part. You don't have to become someone new. You don't have to memorize medical terms or rehearse a speech. You just have to be a little more aware, a little more prepared, and a little more willing to speak honestly, even when it's uncomfortable. Think of your voice as a bridge between how you feel and the care you receive. When that bridge is clear and strong, you and your doctor can walk across it together, and that's when the real healing begins. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a moment where you wish you'd spoken up more at a doctor's visit? Or maybe you learned to advocate for yourself and saw a real difference in your care. Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else watching this feel more confident about doing the same. And if this video spoke to you, if it made you think about how you approach your own health, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Strong Elderly Life. We're here every week with new content made just for you. honest, helpful, and focused on helping you thrive in your later years. So, thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for caring about your health, for learning, and for showing up. Because every time you do, you take another step toward a stronger, healthier, and more empowered life. Until next time, stay strong, stay curious, and stay connected. Here's to living your best life at any age.